Thanks for joining me on day 3 of Core Practice 7. We've been trying to understand these core practices that come out of Matthew 28:20, where Jesus says that he wants us to teach others to obey all he commanded. So we need to learn to obey all he commanded and then pass that along. We've learned about things like repenting and witnessing and being in the Word and fasting and giving and praying. And this week we're talking about the core practice of being in community. And all of this week we are just kind of hunkering down in Matthew chapter 18. The entire chapter is Jesus having this teaching session where a question was raised about, how are you great in my kingdom or in the kingdom of Jesus? And he brings a child in the midst of them, and he starts to give them some practical ways to be humble like this child. And so now we're down to verse 10. Verse 10, we'll read through about verse 14 today. Jesus says this, "See that you do not despise one of these little ones." Now remember, he's been talking about a child, and then he changed the language to little ones. And I think in part he's doing that so that we don't think this is only about how we deal with children. He's talking about how do we deal with people who are not necessarily power brokers, not necessarily impressive people. How do we deal with the least of these in our community? See that you do not despise these little ones. Now, most of us would say, we don't despise anybody in our faith family. That's not who we are. So let's see what he's talking about. What does it mean, despise? I think he's meaning you don't value them enough to do something. "For I tell you that their angels in heaven always see the face of my Father in heaven." So he's telling us they are valuable. The little ones, those that maybe society doesn't naturally treat as valuable, they are valuable to God. Verse 12. "What do you think? If a man owns 100 sheep and one of them wanders away, will he not leave the 99 on the hills and go look for the one that wandered off? And if he finds it, truly, I tell you, he is happier about that one sheep than about the 99 that didn't wander off. In the same way, your Father in heaven is not willing that any one of these little ones should perish." So clearly he's coming back, talking about little ones at the end of this, about wandering and finding ones that have wandered off, and coming back to this idea of despising little ones. So here's what I think is happening in this teaching, this passage, is that a humble way that we are part of the faith family, the kingdom of the King, the kingdom of King Jesus, is that we care enough about our brothers and sisters that we don't just let them wander away. Look down here at this last check mark. We care enough about a little one. Could be a child, could be a teenager, could be a senior citizen. It could be anyone, any age. We care enough about them that when they wander, we seek them out and we try to bring them back to the fold. Now, I think it's important that we understand sometimes our attitude could be, well, that's their problem, not mine. I don't need to get into their business. Or maybe in some cases, they might be kind of what I learned a long time ago to call EGR people, extra grace required. And so we might say, well, good riddance, kind of glad they've moved on. There's someone else's problem. Or maybe we say, I don't really know them. It's not my business. It's someone else's business. Or maybe we might think it's not my gifting. Someone has the gift of mercy, or someone has the gift of shepherding. But we are called to express our humility within the family so that when someone wanders off, we are humble enough to pray for them, humble enough to reach out to them. And maybe it's going to come back on us in some way in which we kind of feel belittled. They're going to say something that we don't want to hear. But are we humble enough to put the time and energy into reaching out to them? I'm not suggesting that we try to triangulate things and create drama, but I'm saying, do we care enough about people, the little ones who've wandered away, that we reach out to them? So I want to encourage you today. Maybe there's someone that you know of that has wandered, that seems to be on the fence, about ready to wander away from a community of faith. Maybe the Holy Spirit wants you to be, in your humility, reaching out to them. We truly welcome the little ones. We ruthlessly guard our lives so that we're not modeling or in any way causing them to sin, and we care enough about them to seek them out when they wander. May God help us.
Shattered pieces, frayed and torn, scattered pieces.